Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Waters Above, and we've finally made it to one of the most important phases in this entire crypto cycle, Q3 in Bitcoin's post-halving year. And just recently, as we closed off the month of June, we had both Bitcoin and XRP closing their highest 3-month candles ever, kicking off this month of July with a noticeable strength. And now we're approaching a time frame I mentioned in my last video. So now that we're here, I felt it was the perfect time to share my thoughts on this market, specifically focusing on the XRP chart, as that's where we left off in my last video, where I mentioned the first week of July as a pivot point leading us into price discovery in late July through early August. So we definitely want to revisit that, especially since we're getting very close to that time frame. And just last weekend, the crypto world was informed that next week on July 14th will be crypto week. So it'll be an all eyes on crypto moment. And you all know when everyone is focused solely on crypto is when the market maker loves to shake things up. So in this video, I'll be breaking down everything you need to know to be prepared for what's to come for this crypto market with all of these significant events ahead. So if you're new here at Waters Above, we're empowering you to unlock your infinite potential with esoteric investing by combining Gematria, Numerology, and Astrology with technical analysis to understand these markets and become a more profitable investor. Now, let's take the clear pill. And I want to start off with this chart here. Perhaps you've seen this before. It's actually a chart that I shared for the first time almost exactly a year ago on July 13th, 2024, when XRP was trading around 45 cents. And the XRP analysis I was sharing at that time was that this dip that we were getting to the 40-cent level in the month of July last year was reminiscent of the lows of February 2017, where XRP did not go any lower from that point forward for the rest of the cycle. And it was that exact shakeout that rinsed the final weak hands before an explosive move to the upside. So last year, back in the month of July, when XRP violently pushed down to the 40-cent level, I was playing my role as the XRP community's therapist, and I was telling them to keep it cool because this was likely the lowest that XRP would go for the rest of this cycle. And that was from many different vantage points, especially from a technical perspective. And what I'm expecting next after that move was the breakout of phase 5, similarly to what was going on back in 2017. And you can see in that post on X, since it was the first time I shared this chart with the world, it didn't have what I shared with everyone next, which was to include the timing of the next move. So now let's jump back into the chart today and review how that phase 5 went. And you'll see in our last complete cycle back in 2017, it took around 473 days to break out of phase 5. That's a little over 67 weeks, quite a while actually. And now you can see in our current cycle, it took XRP around 485 days, very close. But it needed an extra 2 weeks to clear that same exact horizontal trading range that we were stuck in, like we were back in 2017. And I remember back when I was posting this same chart as we were approaching this 473-day mark last year, we had people getting anxious and losing faith and pointing fingers and blaming and saying, "Waters, you're always wrong." You know, the typical exhaust pipe of someone whose fingers are stained orange from Cheeto dust. Well, being told I'm always wrong from 40 cents to $3 must be a compliment, right? Anyways, jokes aside, I'm pointing this out here in this video because in my recent analysis, I've overlaid a fractal, which you can see here in green, and I've overlaid it from the 2017 breakout on our current chart, matching the March 2017 breakout with the recent bullish breakout that we had that initiated in November of last year, in early November. And if this were to play out exactly like it did back in 2017, which by the way, no one promised it would be exact to the day, just like in phase 5, we didn't break out on the exact day. Well, if we were to play out perfectly like in some simulated video game the XRP army created, well then if that was the case, we'd be breaking out this week. And so far, we have yet to see that breakout occur, and after just a couple of days, we're already seeing the pitchforks and torches storming the abyss of the X comments section, just like I saw back in July last year, as we were bottoming out. And in October again, last year, right before XRP broke out, 500% to the upside. And we're still over 400% up from when I first shared this chart with the world back on July 13th, 2024. And by the way, Ethereum is currently down over 25% from when I shared this chart. So for those who were frustrated last year when I wasn't covering Ethereum as much in my videos, perhaps you can see why now. It's nothing against ETH or ETH investors. Personally, I was just seeing a way more lucrative opportunity in the XRP play. And for those who were patient and trusted the process back then, I salute you. You were a true wolf, and the Waters Above Wolfpack welcomes you. So now that we're here and we've completed this first week of July, and XRP is right around $2.30, holding this $2 range for over 200 days now, just like we did over here. What we can do is consider that if phase 5 took a little longer this time around when comparing with our last cycle, then this current phase that we're in is likely to take a little bit longer as well, and it shouldn't bother anyone, especially since we've come this far. I mean, I remember investing in XRP when it was 20 cents back in 2020, and then again after the SEC lawsuit and all the delistings in early 2021. Those were the days. And now we're up almost 1,000% from when it was 20 cents back in 2020. And again, I think we're seeing people getting impatient now that we've stalled out at this $2 level. Perhaps it could be newer investors. It's typically the case. And this was the same back in October last year, the same level of impatience. And looking back at how that all went down, well, the price action speaks for itself, right? So some words of wisdom is get excited when there's boredom and take profits when there's excitement. And it's obvious right now, after over 200 days of sideways, it's becoming boring again for retail investors. So with what we've seen in the past, it's of course not going to repeat 100% with precision, but the blueprint is here. I gave it to you all for free a long time ago. And I know for a fact this chart that you're looking at right here alone has minted many millionaires. And I know this because with this breakout happening at the end of last year, literally in just a couple days after that breakout, I had almost 2 months of consultation calls booked out in advance. And I even needed to turn down clients that were requesting to book a one-on-one call with me. And 90% of my clients started those calls with thanking me for sharing this exact chart you're looking at right here and telling me how much profit they're in because they let this whole move play out and they listened to my reminders along the way to stay focused and not get distracted while all the other shiny objects were popping up and a majority of the crypto world was counting out XRP because of all the nonsense going on with the SEC case. And if you're someone who understands these things and you've already started your investment journey and now you want to start putting your energy into something that's meaningful and could also lead to you generating cash flow on a regular basis instead of risking your money in things like leverage trading or trying to day trade these chaotic markets, and what could be even more effective is while you're learning how to generate cash flow and create something that's truly yours, you're surrounded by a group of people that share the same vision of what they want their future to look like, creating alongside other conscious beings who know what's coming in this technocratic future with more and more AI and humanoid robots in the workforce as the months progress, which shapes and dials in our vision of how we as conscious beings can respond to these changes and the so-called advancement of our society. All of this motivated me to create Waters Above University, to package everything I know about creating businesses and generating cash flow, and to do it in the most sustainable way so that you can ensure every dollar that you invest in yourself will be worth it, because we'll avoid all of the trendy one-hit wonder business ideas that come and go, and we'll focus solely on what works. So if you're ready to make a change and your crypto investments are already locked in and you're now waiting for this final phase of the cycle, consider making this commitment here in our university, so you no longer need to play the waiting game, and you can start taking action with us here today to bring your vision to life so that every day can be more about what you're creating and not waiting. So your days can be more about what you're sharing with the world instead of every day being about waiting for what the next thing these markets do. The waiting game dies here with Waters Above University, and I'm proud to say that because just in these past 6 months of running this university, I've received countless stories of how it's made our members so much more productive in their day-to-day life, and also how much more motivated they are to tap into their creativity. And what's might be actually the most important is that they've become more confident. They believe in themselves more. They're more empowered, and they're surrounded by a group that wants to grow together and isn't concerning ourselves with the drama going on in the world stage. It's truly amazing what we're doing over there in our university. And as of right now, our enrollment period is open until Sunday, July 13th at midnight Pacific time. So if you'd like to secure your spot today, you can head over to the link in the description of this video or in the pinned comment below. And just so you're aware, my Patreon supporters get the biggest discount available for Waters Above University. So by being a member of our Mastermind community over there, you'll actually save $55 off your enrollment at our university. And this price is in fact a one-time payment for a full year of access, making this investment in yourself less than a cup of coffee a day. And it's absolutely packed with value, as you'd get my full 9-week accelerator course, plus your annual university community access includes a weekly group coaching call or a Q&A that's hosted by me. So this way you can work closer with me and we can work on strategizing, game planning, troubleshooting, or whatever you need along the way at your level in the process. And for those who join, I'm grateful for your support, and I can't wait for you to join us on this new journey to be the change here in 2025. Now, getting back to this chart, if we were to consider that XRP took an additional 2 weeks to break out from comparing phase 5 in this cycle as it had in last cycle, then we can also consider our main peak was December 2nd or December 3rd of 2024, and that would be where we're measuring from. And we were to consider the total amount of days, it would bring us to around 225 days from December 2nd or December 3rd, however you want to measure it. Funny enough, the number 225 or the year 2025, they're associated with each other because 2025, you remove the 0 and you have 225. That's with the rules of numerology. So that's definitely significant, just a side note. And when we take from December 2nd over 225 days, it brings us to July 14th, literally the start of crypto week, where the House of Representatives will consider the Clarity Act, essentially clarifying which digital assets are securities to be regulated by the SEC and which digital assets are commodities to be regulated by the CFTC. And us and XRP investors know all about this securities word salad. So with the fact that back in July 2023, XRP was deemed not a security by the courts, and we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of that big win for Ripple, and it's landing perfectly into crypto week, well, I'll let you put those pieces together on that one. And of course, we must be open to things extending out a little longer than expected because, again, after all, no fractal will ever play out exactly as it has in the past. And naturally, if you've ever seen this chart in the past, perhaps you're brand new to the channel. If that's the case, welcome. But for those of you that are aware of my work, you've probably seen this before. And you already know that each phase is lengthening. You can see how much tighter it was back here from phase 1 to 1 than where it's been from phase 1 to where we are today, each step of the way. So this is just much more elongated in general. The fact that phase 5 played out so similarly is pretty mind-boggling. Again, it was slightly extended though by an additional 2 weeks, and that's what we're considering this time around as well. And it does line up very well with some of the esoteric things that we've been talking about on this channel, which I'm actually going to touch on in a bit. So now that we've covered that, one thing I do need to share with you all, and something that we need to be prepared for, is the quote end of this cycle to be broken up into 2 stages. And I do mean that for Bitcoin, and it could actually be how it goes for everything together. But remember, in the last cycle we had with Bitcoin, I'm going to show you kind of a little bit what I mean by this now. In the last cycle we had for Bitcoin, it had 2 stages where we had this parabolic advance. Let me turn off all the drawings. We had this parabolic advance, and then we had a 56% correction in the middle, and then we went up again for a double top, right? So far in this cycle, when we look at the way we've just been stair-stepping up and have officially stair-stepped up into price discovery, and now we're kind of pushing against resistance, ready to make another breakout, that is actually a lot more reminiscent of the 2017 cycle. It's just the stages are a lot more drawn out. It's a lot more arduous, right? Here it was much quicker, violent pullbacks that were quickly bought up, and then we continued, and it looks like a big J curve. Well, here it just looks like a big stair step over and over, but not like our last cycle. What are the similarities is that we have had a mid-cycle correction in the middle, which we've just experienced, and we've had many altcoins 50-70% pullbacks from their local tops either earlier in the year or back at the end of 2024. So there definitely are similarities, but it's the Bitcoin show right now. And I feel like that's something that's important to point out as Bitcoin dominance continues to rise. And we see that actually XRP is one of the best performers since the breakout phase. It has not had a 70% correction where it's sustaining at the lows like we are seeing for XLM, which, by the way, I think XLM is a very lucrative opportunity right now for those people that feel like they missed out on XRP. That's not financial advice, but I'm just telling you what I'm seeing in the charts. I'd personally, if I had to pick between the two right now, I would go with XLM. Just because of the ROI potential and the fact that we're likely moving into an alt season. So again, there's many opportunities here. I'm covering XRP because I have been since I started my channel. First video ever, I was talking about XRP. It's been in every video. So it's just one of those exciting moments where we're getting very close. And I know that those who've been keeping up with my analysis here and tracking this phase by phase, you wanted clarity on what's going on right now for XRP's next big move. So that's the point of today's video, but do just want to throw that out there about my take on XLM right now. Getting back to this 2 stages concept and everything that could go on for Bitcoin in the immediate short term, I do think this has a lot to do with what we pull off between now and specifically the September 7th total lunar eclipse. So I'm giving you the exact date to mark on your calendars. And now I'll quickly break down what I mean by the 2 stages. Simply put, the first stage would be Bitcoin breaking into price discovery, followed by Bitcoin dominance topping out. And during that initial surge into price discovery, whilst Bitcoin dominance is topping, we'd perhaps have a push up to about 120 to maybe 140. I'd probably put more emphasis on the 130K level. But then we'd get another 30%, 25 to 30% correction for Bitcoin after it gets to that level. Maybe even a repeat of what just happened between Trump's inauguration right over here and the week after Liberation Day, where we had Bitcoin correct about 30%. And we actually filled the CME gap that was left behind from the November breakout after Trump's election victory. Well, we still technically have a CME gap sitting around 92K, right where my cursor is. So if Bitcoin was to push to, theoretically, 135K and have the same exact correction like we had earlier in the year over here, then we'd actually come down to fill that gap around 92K. And then we'd either have a crypto style dead cat bounce where Bitcoin would rally back up to around the golden pocket, which I'll assume would be a rejection around 115 to 120K. I could just do all of this like off the top of my head because I've been I've been studying these charts for a long time, so I have a pretty good eye for these things, but you can pull the fibs and do all of this on your own if you'd like. I was kind of making today's video to focus more on XRP than the specifics with Bitcoin, but I'm giving you kind of the future projections and forecast of what I feel Bitcoin's likely to do and how it will influence altcoins, including XRP. So again, push up to 135, correction to 92, fill the CME gap, similar to this move here, same. And then instead of coming all the way back up to a double top or to a full recovery, we would only make it up to about here, which would kind of align with 115 to 120K. And then that relief rally would be when we have the final move up for altcoins. It was similar back in 2017. So let me show you what I mean. In 2017, we had this blow off top for Bitcoin. And then when we had this correction, you see, we came back up, but not all the way. It's a bull trap. This move right here is what I'm talking about. So imagine Bitcoin 135, Bitcoin 92, Bitcoin 115, 120, alts go fucking crazy here. And then we have a bear market, right? That's the kind of idea. I hope you guys appreciate just how transparent I'm being about all of this. I feel like it's the easiest way to teach. And I know you guys like specifics. So that whole concept I just revealed to you would be very similar to 2017. And earlier, I just said a moment ago that the way Bitcoin's been breaking out, having these 25 to 30% pullbacks along the way is also very reminiscent of 2017. And guess how we started today's video? We're talking about the XRP breakout from 2017, which also seems to be mimicking as well. So I'm entertaining that full on right now. Another thing we could have is Bitcoin would still get up to this time frame, late August, have that 20 to 30% correction in the month of September, but then we actually push even higher into October or November, and we top out between 150 to 180K to hit the macro 1618 fib at the golden ratio, which I could quickly show you, sits around 173K. So what do I mean by that in plain English? If you pull a fib from the prior top in November 2021 down to the swing low of November a year later, we have the 1618 sitting at 173K. Just make sure that you have this setting turned on, the fib levels based on log scale. So I think this gives you a very nice visual representation of what's going on here. So crazy to look at. My average Bitcoin buy-in was $7,000. It's crazy. Anyways, so it would be something like this, because I know sometimes you guys like me to draw stuff out. If it was the move like that, we'd go here and then really deep to scare everybody, and then one final move. This, funny enough, would be the same support line that we recently just backtested with the April crash. I think this is a very plausible outcome if Bitcoin is to have the crazy epic, full cycle that we would all want, of course, because the more Bitcoin goes up, the more all of your altcoins go up. You should all know this by now. That market cap rotation would be mind-blowing. And with the way our last cycle went regarding the alt season, you'd see that Bitcoin did in fact have a 30% pullback right here. Okay, that's very important to point out, because from that bottom right there to the final push we had up, and you could see we ended up getting a lot of resistance, distributional top, which led to the end of the alt season. I know Bitcoin went up again, but a lot of alts did not. But this whole move right there for Bitcoin, it was only about 120% more off of the price discovery 30% correction that I'm alluding to could be ahead of us. Whilst Bitcoin was making this 120% move, most altcoins had insane gains during that same phase. Solana went up 1,700%. Dogecoin went up 9,500%. By the way, Doge is like one of my biggest investments this cycle. And even XRP, whilst dealing with the SEC case and all of those delistings, still went up 750% in that same time frame after Bitcoin had this 30% correction. And then it went on to show signs of stalling out. So what would this mean for XRP holders? Getting back to that, well, depending on how this shakes out, my conservative outlook is expecting at least a $7 to $8 XRP in the initial move that's completed by the August new moon on August 23rd, leading into the September total lunar eclipse on September 7th that I referenced earlier. That's my conservative, but please don't stop listening right now and quote me on that. Please pay attention. Again, this is my conservative outlook. Whilst my more moderate to aggressive, or I'll say aggressive short-term outlook would be seeing this entire move completed within the month of August and for the breakout to be noticeable later in this month of July. And that would be very similar to the way the fractal is drawn out. And that price target still stands at $15 at the higher end of the range and at least $10 in the month of August. And remember, the way this move plays out has everything to do with Bitcoin dominance and Bitcoin breaking out into price discovery, just like I told everyone back when XRP was 40 cents and everyone was telling me I was wrong because apparently updates in the SEC case would be what sends XRP into the $2 range or $3 level. And I said countless times, not only in my own YouTube videos, in my Red Pill podcasts, in interviews I did with the Bearable Bull, putting myself out there to his very large community. I said this countless times, that I was not entertaining that idea of the SEC case having anything to do with the price to the upside at all in my analysis. And that the case is a distraction, and it still is in my opinion. And we have countless examples of that being true when it comes to the actual price action and the facts in these charts. Now, can I entertain this $15 target being hit in Q4 if we are to see the final phase of this cycle broken into two stages like I was mentioning before, with Bitcoin going up to 130, correcting to 90, and coming back up into October, November, to have that true 4-year cycle? Of course, I could entertain this, because as long as Bitcoin dominance is in an uptrend, then we can't expect the types of extremes we see in a true alt season, where we see Bitcoin dominance collapsing. Until we see that, we can't bank on that, right? So if we were to entertain the scenario where Bitcoin finalizes the cycle in October or November later this year, topping out 4 years after our last cycle peak in November 2021, then both my conservative and aggressive targets for XRP can be hit, and it wouldn't be too far apart from each other. And depending how things go, we can of course have a mind-melting blow off top that even extends higher than 15. Perhaps into 20 plus. But I do need to be honest, I don't think that will last long. And I feel like that's more important to talk about than the targets itself. And let me just quickly show you what I'm talking about here. For those people that are wondering, what do I mean by that it won't last long? Well, just look at how the last cycle peaked, where we can see in the final 7 days. So we're going to go back 7 days would be bringing us from here to the very peak was 170% in the final week of that run. And then just a week later, let me show you, 7 days later, we were down already 50%. Then let's show you how far down we were 2 weeks later. So this is on day 13, we were already 70% down. And a full month later, we were already 80% down. And I bet you so many were left holding the bag because they let greed get the best of them. And let me quickly show you something. Let's look at the difference between a $15 XRP and a $25 XRP, just from the percentage side of things. So we're looking at a 63% difference. Let's call it 60 to 70% move. Now, this is a lot, of course, especially if you were accumulating XRP when I was at under 40 cents. But for most people, maybe that's not the case. Maybe they're going to wait to FOMO in at 5. That might be a majority, actually. Now, if you got in under 2, consider yourself lucky. If you got in under 1, you're a champion. Got in under 50, congratulations. So But what I want to show you here is that this push between 15 to 25, it might only last 48 hours. And then 48 hours after that, it could be from 25 right back down to 15 again. And then 2 weeks later, it could be right back at 8 again. And this is how crypto trades. And I'm bringing this up because those who are getting antsy right now for this breakout are some of the people that will get nervous to sell when we're pushing up towards $10 and higher. And if we were to push up to 15, they think we're going to 50. And then by the time we're back down at 7, again, they'd have sold nothing and be waiting for the imaginary relief rally. Don't be that guy. Have an exit strategy. And if you're one of those who need guidance with their exit strategy, consider joining our mastermind community over at patreon.com/watersabove. We're moving forward. I will be focusing my Red Pill podcasts on exit strategy and sharing exactly what I'm doing in this market. And another perk of joining our mastermind community is you'll receive live updates whenever I buy or sell my investments. So you'll get those updates along with access to our members only Discord server where you could come hang out with like-minded conscious individuals seeking to thrive in this matrix together. So now that I've covered XRP, I just quickly want to address what I mentioned a little bit ago about a pattern that's been playing out. I think I talked about it, but if I didn't, oh well, here's some extra credit. It has to do with the number 47. I want you guys to keep this in mind, especially because XRP is tied back to this number. We have XRP is the 15 in Chaldean and 47 is the 15th prime number. But that's just a little side note, but it is important for XRP holders. Now, as most of you are aware, Donald Trump is the 47th president. And we recently had a market crash that bottomed on April 7th, right here. That would be the 4-7 date. And if you look at when the stock market topped out on February 19th and you measure over to where it bottomed on April 7th, you'll see that it took exactly 47 days. And this crash was caused exoterically, according to the world stage, it was caused by Donald Trump, the 47th president. Well, on this exact date, Bitcoin crashed to 74K. Let me quickly show you this. We have right here, Bitcoin hitting 74K on April 7th. Internationally, we would write this date in Europe, for instance, 7-4. And when we measure from April 7th, let me show you over here. From April 7th over to when the rally ended officially, which was right here, May 23rd, you'll see that it took 47 days. And that, as of right now, is Bitcoin's all-time high. You can't make this up. Now, interestingly enough, when you add 47 days to May 23rd, you literally land on today, July 8th. And it seems we have Bitcoin and the entire crypto market gearing up to push higher, just like we did at the same exact time of the year back in 2020, following the C19 crash, where we also rallied all the way until early September before seeing any notable pullbacks. We also saw a correction in September of 2021. We saw a correction in the September of 2022, 23, and I don't think this year will be any different this time around. So this could, of course, be a significant date for us to shift energy regarding today, but I gotta admit, as a technical analyst, it feels weird to expect more upside regarding the stock market when we have the S&P and the NASDAQ trading in price discovery. They're pretty overheated, I gotta admit. But with these tariff deals coming to a conclusion, and crypto week ahead, it seems like the perfect window of time between now and the September lunar eclipse to actually push retail back into the space and have them FOMO into the next rally before another seemingly, quote, out of nowhere correction in the month of September. And what could actually cause that correction is the passing of these 3 laws that are part of crypto week. 3 acts that will be considered next week. And as you can see, the moderate estimates for this timeline of the potential new laws being passed, signed into law by Donald Trump, is late August into mid-September. So wouldn't it be an epic trap? And now I'm sharing just the theory with you guys, being playful right now. Don't take this too seriously, but I'm sharing the idea. I want to see what you all think. So wouldn't it be an epic trap for them to float out positive developments regarding one of these new laws and then use that to treat retail as exit liquidity as those retail investors are FOMOing into the narrative, and then they pass another one of these laws which pulls the plug and it ritualizes those same investors that jumped in too late. And then during that pullback time frame, after these new laws are fully passed and nobody cares about them anymore, we'll have this set up into the final stage of the cycle. It's definitely something to consider. And if you want a thorough breakdown of my thoughts regarding this, I actually just released a new Red Pill podcast over on Patreon for a Mastermind community where I decoded Crypto Week. And that podcast will be included in your membership over there. So definitely check that out if you're interested, especially because Crypto Week is 1 week from today. But for now, we're in those final moments where all it takes is a single narrative to push Bitcoin past this 112K level. And with the way things are going, if you happen to be watching this video a week after I've released it, we could already be in price discovery for Bitcoin as you're checking out this video for the first time. And then once that happens, keep an eye on Bitcoin dominance because remember, at the end of last year, when we had that 10% correction for Bitcoin dominance, that was enough to see many of the top altcoins shoot up 400 to 500% in just 3 weeks. And based on the charts that I've been looking at with you here today, we're getting very close to a repeat of a similar breakout for the altcoin market coming very soon. So I'll wrap this one up here. And again, for those of you that are interested in learning how to generate cash flow and create your own business and support your investment journey, then check out my university, which will provide you with a blueprint to get started on your journey to becoming an entrepreneur. And it's a one-time payment for 1 year access, plus your enrollment will include the full 9-week accelerator course, and your annual university community access includes a weekly group coaching call or a Q&A that's hosted by me to bring even more value to your experience in our university on a weekly basis as we all work together to turn your holistic vision of success into a reality. And I'm looking forward to you joining us on this new journey. Also, next week within our university, I'll be kicking off our new 9-week accelerator watch party and our first meeting to kick off this new July cohort on July 17th. So definitely make sure to enroll on time because we'll be closing down enrollment at the end of this week on Sunday at midnight Pacific time. So I'm especially looking forward to our upcoming university community meeting. And to everyone else, I'm wishing you all an amazing rest of your day in the Matrix. Much love.